Where the fuck is McClay? I hope they come to Phoenix.
I was about to say I would love to get him on here.
That would be awesome.
Yeah.
All right, awesome. Welcome to the Bogcast. I'm Keith Obit, joined with my best friend Brian McClay. We are brought to you by Bang Salon. Come get all your hair needs, including cuts, natural colors, vivid colors, extensions, shampoo and stylings, all under one roof at Bang Salon. Excuse me, I haven't done this ad in a while. Find and message Bang Salon on Instagram at Bang Salon at BANGDSALON. Use promo code
Bogcast
for 20% off your first visit. So come on down and get banged by Jordan. But if you really try to bang her, I'll fucking kill you. Cool.
All right, check us out on all your normal podcast apps, Spotify. Subscribe. Check out the new member section. There's a bunch of different tiers. You'll like them. Trust me. Check them out. Join.
Sweet. We have a very special guest in the house today because he is the guitar player from me and Brian's favorite band of all time, Will Haven, who we've probably followed since the mid to late 90s, which when we were in high school and shit. So we'd like to welcome Jeff Irwin to the show.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
Sweet, man. I just want to say really quick, we really appreciate you coming down, and congratulations on 25 years of the band and everything like that.
Yeah,
so
thanks, man.
we really appreciate this. First off, if it's cool, I'd like to start off in the early days, even before Will Haven.
Sure. Yeah.
I recently read a quote mentioning Stephen Carpenter from the Deftones and how you were in your first band with him. Can you talk about those early days, just playing guitar and, in your first bands forming?
So I originally started playing drums. So when I was like 12 years old, my dad bought me a drum set. And so I just played drums every day after high school and just became a drummer. And then I was in college, my first year of college. I just started junior college. And I didn't have a band. I was just playing drums by myself. And this girl that sat next to me in my math class, she was like, hey, do you play music? And I'm like, yeah. And she's like, oh, you should check out my friend's band. And she made this cassette tape, and it was the first FAR demo. And she's like, yeah, they just put this out. You should listen to it. And I went into my car and I put it in. I was like, oh my God. Like, I was just floored. Like, the demo was amazing. And so I went to the girl the next day. I was like, this thing's awesome. She's like, well, we should go talk to the guys and, go say hi to them. And she was best friends with the bass player and Jonah at the time. And so the bass player, Malcolm, had worked at Tower Records. So I went down to Tower Records and introduced myself to Malcolm. I said, hey, I really enjoyed your demo tape. I'm a drummer. And he's like, hey, come hang out, come to our practice. And so I went to their practice first, one of their practices at their bass practice in this garage in Sacramento. And I went in there and just kind of hung out, watched them practice by myself. And just we were hanging out. And then we went to dinner that night. And then that night, me and Sean Lopez clicked really fast. And we just came really tight and just started hanging out 24/7 with Sean. And so kind of that, seeing Sean play guitar, I was like, oh, I like guitar's kind of cool. That looks like a cool instrument to play, because I'd played drums my whole life. And so then me and Sean ended up moving in together, because he lived at his parents' house and I still lived at my parents' house, and we both had to move out. So we ended up moving in together in this house in downtown Sacramento, and we just became roommates. And then Grady moved in with us. And then, so our first real band was this, we were kind of jamming together at the house a little bit, because Sean played guitar, I played drums. And then the Deftones, to kind of bring Stefan in the fold, Deftones had practiced in this place where Dawkins, I guess the drummer for Dawkins, had his own warehouse in Sacramento. And he used to have they had this whole warehouse. It was just a full-on stage, like a stage rock setup. It was so weird. Somehow the Deftones got to practice there. So we went in there and started jamming. So Stefan and Sean were playing guitar, and it was this band called Flower, and I was playing drums, and we were just kind of messing around, but it was just super heavy riffs. And so that was kind of my first initial band playing with those guys. And then, then the story went on where, Flower kind of just dissolved, and then we started a band called Sock, me and Sean did. And so I played drums, Sean played guitar, we got Grady to sing, and my friend Adam played bass. And then after Sock dissolved, then Will Haven started, and I sold my drums and bought a guitar and said, all right, if Sean's going to leave, I want to play guitar. And then so I ended up that's how that started. But Yeah, I just played drums my whole life, and then just kind of grown up with Sean, and then seeing him play and learning, what he does. And because when Sock had broken up, we tried a couple guitar players, and they were horrible, and they just didn't fit the vibe. And so I was like, okay, like if we can't find somebody, I kind of know Sean really well, and I know how he plays in style, and I was like, I could probably figure it out on my own. So it took me a few years to kind of get that, dialed, but I eventually did, and then kind of became Will Haven. So yeah, I started as a drummer and just became a drummer.
That's crazy because it clears so much shit for us. Because as fans, especially like in the early 2000s, there was always these rumors. Yeah, the guys from Will Haven and Far were in a band together, and then it broke up, and then it started Far and Will Haven. And we're like, holy shit! Like, who was that band? Like, it wasn't until recently until we learned about Sock and all this stuff like that. So that's really cool.
Yeah, we've always kind of jammed together. Like, and it's a very weird organic thing how it happened. Like, Far was already they weren't established, but they had just put out their first demo tape, and that's when I met those guys, and I became really close with Sean. But I didn't meet the Deftones guys through music. I met, I was kind of playing a jam with this guy named Mark, and his sister went to high school, and she had a bunch of high school friends, and she ended up being best friends with this guy named Todd Wilkinson, who actually became the guitarist in Team Sleep. And Todd and Chino were best friends forever. And so I met Chino through Todd, and then Todd was like, oh, he's in a band called Deftones. And this is what Deftones were playing, backyard barbecues. They weren't playing really shows much. And so that's how I became friends with Chino. And so I didn't really meet the Deftones through the music. I met them through my friend Todd. And then knowing Chino, then I was hanging out with Stefan and all those guys. And Abe wasn't even in the band yet. Abe was in a different band. So, I mean, it's funny because like there's more history than people know actually about the Sacto scene. It's like not, we just weren't friends because we were in bands. We were friends way before the bands it kind of even really took off. Like we were, I hung out with Chino like skateboarding and those guys, and Sean skated. So it was like more of skateboarding that we were kind of brought together, and then we just ended up starting bands, and then that just kind of took off its own directions. But yeah, there's a real deep history of the Sacto scene, especially with us Far and Deftones. It's just a lot of people don't know. They're just like, oh, you guys from the same town. It's like, no, we've kind of known each other since we were 19 years old.
I think it's crazy so you didn't start playing guitar until you started Will Haven?
Yeah.
Holy shit.
'Cause I wanted to play drums, but then, we started Sock, and Sock was awesome. Like I love that band. And
what kind of style was that band?
it was pretty
Just
heavy.
really heavy, huh?
Yeah, super heavy, a lot of risk. Cause like at the time, like we were into like Earth Crisis and Sepultura and stuff like that. And Sean was just really, every song was just crunching. And there's actually, if you go on YouTube and you put in Will Haven Sock, it will come up with most of our songs.
Oh, wow.
Somebody found it and put it up there.
I think I did find that, but I wasn't sure if it was real or not.
We just did, we kind of were doing it for fun, and then we wrote 10 songs, and we went to record them. So we did just a live to DAT at a studio. So it's not really recorded, it's just us playing live, and we recorded it. And we put it out we put out a 4-song demo that we would hand out when we'd play sometimes. But we actually had 10 songs, a whole record done. But, yeah, it started getting some steam. Like people were kind of like coming to our shows, and then we played this show in Reno, and like it was just packed, and the place went off, and we're like, oh my god, this is kind of getting a little serious. And then the Far guy's like, Sean, what are you doing? Like it's just gonna, it's gonna conflict with Far. And so Sean was like, and then right when Sock started kind of getting a little bit of like buzz, that's when Far got signed to Sony. And so Sean's like, I can't do Sock anymore. I got to concentrate on Far. I'm like, yeah, it's all good, dude. Like that's your baby. So when he took off, that's when we started auditioning guitar players to kind of take Sean's part, and no one's good as Sean. Like Sean's just a badass. So I was like, okay, well, I'll just try to like play guitar, And so luckily, and Sean and Stefan were endorsed by ESP at the time. So actually I called Stefan, and he's like, hey, I get you endorsement with them. And so I was like, all right, send me a guitar. So I got a guitar, and then I had to go buy equipment and stuff. So yeah, it took me a while to learn how to like play guitar, but
I was gonna say, like, how long was it until you guys started like writing your first songs?
I was writing at the time it was in a lot of Fudge Tunnel, and so I was playing a lot of Fudge Tunnel songs, and they were kind of easy. And then I just kind of started messing around, and then I didn't really have an idea. I just kind of had some things I was fooling with, and then Mike, our original bass player, he's been my best friend since 7th grade, and his mom had bought him a bass for Christmas one year, but he never touched it. He just kind of sat in the corner of the room. So I was like, hey, Mike, I want to start a band, like pick up that bass and let's jam. So me and him kind of got together, and then Grady was my roommate. So I was like, hey, you're going to sing no matter what. So you don't have a choice. But Grady sang in Sock, so he kind of had a little bit of, time under his belt. And then we didn't have a drummer at all, but Wayne was a friend of mine who skateboarded with me, and he played bass in another Sacto band. But he came to me one day and he's like, hey, are you guys playing in a new band? I was like, yeah. But my friend Mike's playing bass. He's like, well, I want to play drums. And I was like, do you play drums? He's like, no, but I'll learn. So he ended up like kind of learning how to play drums while I was learning how to play guitar.
That's unbelievable.
Yeah, and then so I think that's why Will Haven became what it was, because none of us had lessons. None of us had they didn't grow up playing those kind of instruments. We just kind of just gelled together and learned as four of us, and it was just very organic how Will Haven happened. It was just, we were just kind of jamming, and I was like, okay, well, I'm going to go, since Far got signed to Sony, I'm going to go roadie for Far. Like, that's going to be my job. So I'm just going to play a band just to fill the time, really. And then, Will Haven kind of just became its own little thing. So I didn't ever do that. But so my goal wasn't to like really be in a band. It was just kind of fill time and go maybe roadie for Sean. Yeah. It wasn't like, so it was kind of cool how organically it just kind of happened that way,
Damn, that's crazy.
Well, I think we kind of know where that Jeff Irwin timing thing comes from.
Yeah,
right?
not knowing what I'm doing.
No shit. I was going to ask you about that, because especially the other members in foreign films too, they're like, yeah, Jeff Irwin has his own timing, and I wasn't sure if that was deliberate or if that was just like this kind of unconscious thing, like hey guys, check this out, this riff. And they're like, that's off timing as fuck.
I think it's,
but don't get me wrong, I fucking absolutely love it.
Oh yeah, I think it's more of like me being a drummer though. Like,
yep.
I think a lot of musicians, if you want to be a good musician, learn how to play drums first, because you learn your timing, your tempo. Like for me, it's easy to write a riff because I can hear the drums in my head, because I'm playing drums in my head while I'm writing the riff. So when I take it to Mitch or when I took it to Wayne, I kind of had an idea of like, okay, this is how the beat I hear in my head is supposed to go. And so he just kind of nails it. So it's way easier for me to write songs than me like writing a song and going, all right, drummer, figure out what you want to do over it, So I think that's where the timing and the lag and the the 6/8 time, and just I can hear when I'm playing, I can hear the groove of it in my head.
That explains a lot, because sometimes I wonder like if the drum beat's written first before the riff.
No,
that's on some of the songs, because but that explains everything, because it's almost at the same time.
Yeah, and El Diablo was fairly straightforward, So Wayne I was playing 6/8 because I didn't really know a lot of changes and riffs at the time. I was kind of just playing more Neurosis, just straightforward. So a lot of it was 6/8, so it was easy for him to kind of keep that just 6/8 timing down. So he got really good really fast because he didn't have to do a lot, but he just had to keep the time. But he started really getting into it right before he left. I was like, damn, Wayne, you come a long way drumming. But with Mitch, it's a different animal. It's like I write the riff, and I usually demo drums over it and give it to him, but he's a powerhouse. So I'm like, all right, here's my idea, but you do what you do over what I have already kind of in the work. So he takes it to another level, and he puts in the fills in and like add stuff to it. So it's like, it's a blessing having Mitch, because he's more of a jazz drummer. His old band was a band called Severance. I don't know if you guys have heard of them. They were on MTV for a minute. They did like the summer show, whatever, one year. But they were kind of rock, but he was a very technical drummer, and that's why I was really intrigued by him, because like they're playing rock, but he just kind of stood out. I was like, it'd be kind of cool to have Will Haven have more of like a technical kind of a machine back there, and just somebody instead of somebody just kind of keeping the time. So yeah, Mitch is like, I just give him the idea and he'll run with it, but usually it starts with me.
I have to say, I have an electric drum kit in there. I fucking love drumming along to Will Haven. Just the fucking beats are fucking bad as fuck.
Yeah, and I think that's why El Diablo was so powerful, is because Wayne just drove that beat home every song, just in your face.
Well,
boom,
you know
boom,
what it was for me personally? Is that fucking snare.
Yeah.
That snare, I've never heard a snare as good as that since. Like, that snare's blowing me away, man. Like, ever since we're like, holy shit. Like,
yeah, that's kind of a Sacto thing, like, because when we were like listening to music, like Helmet was a big influence on us, and that snare in the early Helmet days was just cracking. So the Sock demo I made sure to crank my snare as tight as I could, and just, if you listen to the demo, just ping, ping. So
it's almost like a piccolo kind
of. Totally.
Yeah.
So we went to record El Diablo, Eric, our producer, was like, hey, we need to get that snare just cracking, or just try to get that Sacto vibe sound.
Yeah, that's dope.
Yeah.
I have to ask, how did you guys come up with the band name, and
Yes.
who is Will Haven?
So the story is that we didn't have a name for a long time, and then we played a couple parties, but we didn't have a name. We just kind of played whatever. And we had our first real show in Sacramento. It was this really small kind of bar, and we were loading in, and Sean Lopez and Grady went across the street to Tower Records just to shop. And then they came back to the venue, and I'm sitting there, and Grady's like, I think I got her name. I was like, what is it? And he's all, it's Will Haven. I'm like, what the hell is that? And I'm like, all right, whatever. It's like, we just need a band name. I don't care. We're probably not going to be around for very long anyway. So whatever. And then so a couple of days after that, I'm like, what is that? What did you get that name? He's like, well, we were at Tower Records, and Grady had mentioned a street name in Sacramento called Will Hagen, because there's a street in Sacramento named Will Hagen. And Sean Lopez thought Grady had said Will Haven. And Sean was like, hey, man, that's kind of a cool band name, Will Haven, because then you can say The Haven or something like that. And it's kind of like emo, but it's like, you guys aren't emo. And so Grady's like, yeah, I like that. So Grady came back. And so Sean really named the band, and Grady just kind of like agreed with him. And then I was like, yeah, whatever. It doesn't matter to me. So
I feel like that's how a lot of really good band names happen. They're just like, what was that? That would be a really cool band name.
Pretty much it was that. Yeah.
That's crazy.
At first I didn't. I was like, yeah, then we can kind of play off the name. And then, then years later, people are like, when they tell me like, oh, I saw a flyer with Deftones and Will Haven, I thought it was just some dude with a guitar,
Totally, yeah.
And
It adds like mysteriousness to it, though,
Yeah.
in a way. But for some reason, our dumbasses thought it was like
Mandela
a
effect.
1930s poet or something.
Yeah,
That was like, well, everyone, or we were in the 2000s, but then when we looked it up, we're like, I could have sworn we saw that somewhere.
we were talking about it the other day, and we were like, I swear to God, we looked that up, and there was something like that. It's like one of those Mandela effects or something.
Totally.
You know what I mean?
I mean, that's going around a lot lately, so I'm not surprised.
Yeah, we're convinced we're on an alternate timeline.
Oh, yeah, I'm getting one with you guys in this one.
Well, I was gonna ask what your guys' writing process was like. If you write the songs or riffs and then present them to the band, or more so if they're kind of jam songs, and then.
I would say 90% of it is just me. I write all the riffs, and then I sometimes will demo drums over them, and then show them to Mitch. And then like Morte, there was a time where Will Haven, we didn't know if we were going to make another record, and so we were going to maybe do another project, but we had no idea what we were going to do. So me, Mitch, and Adrian, our new bass player, just started jamming just random noises and stuff, and trying to make a project out of it. And then when Grady was like, we should do another Will Haven record, I was like, well, I got all this weird shit that we did. I somehow could probably morph this into a Will Haven record. So I'd take a lot of those ideas and kind of made like the song The Sun, like the intro, or the middle part is a jam session we had done. And so I just kind of sprinkled stuff into riffs I had made. But normally it's me. I write pretty much all of the riffs, and then I don't touch the lyrics. That's all Grady. I'll help him with like cadence and stuff, but Grady does all the lyrics on his own. And so I'm the music guy and Grady's the lyric guy, but it's, I don't tell Adrian what to do. He just does. I just kind of show him the riffs, and he'll just play what I do, or he'll add stuff. But he's really good at doing that. And then Mitch is just, like I said, I'll show Mitch an idea and he'll just run with it and just do his own little stuff over it. So it's collaborative, even though it's me doing most of it, but everybody still puts their 2 cents in after I kind of show them the idea.
It seems like the trend nowadays for bands is to everyone just write and send riffs over the internet at home instead of writing in person. Do you guys do that at all? Or
no? Luckily, we have we all live fairly close together, and we got a warehouse probably about almost 8 years ago now. We rented this big warehouse, and we built we actually have a little t-shirt company that we do out of it, but we also made a huge like practice room in there. And so we were going like 3 times a week. We go in there and just jam and work on songs and stuff. So luckily, yeah, we're still old school, and we don't.
I love that. I think that's badass.
We don't send any risk to. So we go in there into the practice spot and just work on it at the practice spot. So yeah,
I feel like it affects the writing process in a way. I mean, just there's something about just everyone being there and just that vibe together.
Yeah, and we all love being together. Like I said, like we're all best friends. Like Mitch and Adrian and Grady are my best friends in the world. So it's not like, I'm going to band practice to hang out with my band members. It's like we go in there to hang out, and when like we talk shit for hours, and then we'll start jamming, and then we'll take a break, and then talk some more shit. And it's like, so it's us just hanging out more than just really wanting to or having to be there. It's like we want to be there and just hang out. And our row house is awesome. So yeah, we're pretty blessed to have that, you know. And I only live like a block away from our practice spot, so yeah, I could just go there and show up, and it's pretty cool.
So yeah, that's dope. It's kind of funny because it's amazing how one show can kind of change everything musically for certain people, right?
Yeah.
And that kind of happened for us.
I guess it was this show, right? Should I just wrong?
Yeah.
I'm gonna be a nerd here.
Oh yeah. Is it Boston?
Actually, the drummer from Snot signed it, and so did Toomer, the bass player. But yeah, this is Boston's.
That
so
was a pretty amazing
you guys
show.
played with Far. This was the greatest show of all time, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I was probably about 15 at this time, but we actually missed you guys. But me and my other guitar player that I was in a band with at the time, Far was playing at the time, and then we were in a really heavy band at the time. Actually, Max Cavalera's sister managed us, Kira.
Okay.
And she was like, yeah, the Deftones are gonna play there secretly. Like, you guys gotta go. Like, my brother's gonna play. From my understanding, it was like Soulfly's first show playing live music before they even called Soulfly. I think
that wasn't Dana's first memorial show. Okay,
yeah.
yeah.
And they were going by Sebaculo, I believe.
Yeah.
So I don't know. I was like I said, 15, 16 years old. Just I was meeting Chino, meeting Chi Cheng, just getting shit signed like that. And then my buddy Mike grabbed your fucking your CD, and we popped it in the car. Like I said, as soon as we heard those riffs and that fucking snare, dude, for the next 25 years, man, we've been listening to you guys and shit. So he's right about that.
Yeah, that's actually a really special show. Yeah, the Cavalier family's fucking amazing. Like, it was funny because Chino, I'd given Chino our first demo tape, Will Haven demo tape, and I had our phone number on it. And he had became friends with Max, and he gave Max our demo, or I think he gave Dana our demo. And Dana gave it to Max, and Max like loved it. And so I remember I came home one day, because me and Sean Lopez lived together, and I came home one day, and Sean's like, hey man, he's like, guess who called you today? I'm like, who? He's like, Max Cavalera. I'm like, what? He's like, yeah, Max called our house. And I was like, oh shit. I was like, I bet you like got our demo from Chino or something. And so I actually didn't talk to him, but and then somehow, I don't know if Glory reached out to us, whatever, and she's like, hey, we want you guys to do, because Dana was a big Will Haven fan. Dana's favorite bands were like Snot, Deftones, Far, us, and a few others at the time, but she wanted all his favorite bands to play that show. And so we're like, yeah, definitely, we'll go do it. So we ended up doing it, and we only played, I think every band had like maybe like 15 minutes. It was like, because they had so many bands on the bill, people were just running through it. But that's when I became friends with the Cavaliers and stuff, and got close to them. But yeah, I remember that show vividly. But the craziest thing is that when Soulfly was playing, or Max was playing, I was kind of sitting on the back, and I think we were sitting on the roof actually, because they had that roof on the back there. And while they were playing, he said something about Dana, and all of a sudden the shooting star shot over the venue and like right over the stage. And I remember like Chris Rovine from Far, I looked at him and was like, what the fuck was that? I was like, that is the craziest shit I ever seen. Like, it was like Dana was like there with us.
Oh, wow.
Just floating across the sky because all his favorite people were there. And it was like,
I believe that shit.
Yeah, it was so amazing. Like the whole show was like just so rad.
Like, yeah, Dino was on guitar.
Yep.
From Fear Factory.
Yeah,
and shit.
it was cool. And it was like such a small little like bar too. It was crazy. Yeah.
That place is like iconic for us growing up. We were there constantly. That place was amazing.
I think did we play there again with Hatebreed or something like that? I can't remember. I don't know if we
I
played
think
there
the
again.
last time we saw you guys, it was at.
We were trying to remember the name of the fucking club. Did you ever play the Mason Jar? Do you remember?
I believe we have.
I think that's what it was.
Because I threw one of my friends into the monitor and he fucked up his ribs.
Yeah, we've played there only a handful of times. I mean, we played Boston's. I think we played there with. We played with Deftones at that place. That was
Celebrity.
The one that was outside. It was Arizona State. The stadium was there, and then there was a little river, right?
Yep.
And over the river there was this like a rock club, but it was like kind of
for Jeeps and shit.
I don't know. It was weird. It was like a weird rock club, but then like they had the show. The Deftones show was outside.
Yeah.
In the lawn area, and it kind of looked over the So that we played there, and we played a couple. We played here with Hatebreed once. I can't remember where. But yeah, only a handful of times I think we've been here. So.
Yeah, dude. The funny, also the other funny thing is, we know why now, because you guys all knew each other. So of course you're gonna, be friends and go on tours with each other and this and that. But we didn't know all you guys were from the same town for the longest time. You know what I mean? We were like, and seriously, like our favorite bands were out of that show.
Yeah.
Snot
and Sacramento too.
Well, Snot was like, one of our
Snot
favorite bands.
wasn't, but yeah.
But out of that show, so many of those bands just became the stuff we listened to forever. And then when we found out that you and Far and Deftones were all from, I mean, we knew Deftones were from Sacramento, but we didn't know about Far and Will Haven. And like Keith was saying, we would hear all these stories about it, and it was just amazing how that show happened. And it was a really, really cool thing to think back about.
Yeah, I mean, that was all Dana. Dana brought a lot of us. Well, he brought us into the Sepultura world. Like, I mean, that changed a lot of our lives. Like, Far, it actually, I guess Jonah talked about it. They did their first last Sepultura like original member show or tour, and Dana introduced Max to Far, and Max loved Far, and so he's like, "Oh, I wanted Sepultura to take out Far," which is weird.
Crazy.
That's a total weird thing.
He talked about that shit on.
And I remember Sean called me on because he was on the road. And he's like, "Oh man, these shows are crazy. Like the shows are rad, but they don't like us." And
well, which is crazy because Sepultura was one of my fucking favorite bands ever too at the time. But Far was like the band that got us out of heavy shit. Like there was like these few years where like it was just, if it wasn't heavy, it wasn't cool. And then Far came along. And it's like, okay, we're listening to heavy shit and Far. So we fucking loved Far.
Yeah, they're amazing. Like that's what I thought that was cool about our three of our bands is that we were all really close and like we hung out all the time, but none of us really wanted to sound like each other.
No.
I mean, being in Sacramento, we're probably going to sound a little bit like each other because that's what we know. But we weren't trying to like go out of our way to copy each other, and which happened just years after. Every band wanted to be like Deftones after that. But at the time, it was like, okay, Deftones have their thing going, and then Far kind of had their little thing going. And like when I started Will Haven, I was like, well, I don't want to sound like either of those two because they're my buddies, and I don't want to sound like them. So I was like, okay, well, I want to go more the Neurosis kind of route and make it more darker and evil, heavy, but darker and evil. Not so. Far was had dark, but they were
I know what you're saying.
Yeah, I mean they were more.
Your riffs are evil as fuck.
Yeah, like I didn't want like Deftones and Far you could play on the radio. I didn't want Will Haven to be played on the radio.
Yeah,
so
I love that.
It was kind of that vibe. I didn't want to copy my friends, so that I always thought that was cool that we were so good friends that we didn't want to rip each other off.
That's what we thought was cool too. It's like these three bands are from Sacramento. They're friends, and they don't sound anything alike.
Yeah, and that was. And I'm more respect too. It's like, and they would call you out on that too. If I wrote a riff and Steph was like, man, you just fucking ripped me off, dude. Yeah. So it was more like, yeah, we got to do our own thing.
Yeah. When Jonah was on here, he actually talked about the importance of the Cattle Club. Can you just talk about the Sacto scene in the late 90s in that club?
Yeah, we wouldn't be here without that club. I mean, Jonah was right. That place was like, I mean, even before Will Haven or I started like going or playing in bands, I would go to the Cattle Club just to see amazing bands. Like, God, I mean, like Mr. Bungle went through there, and like Smashing Pumpkins and Pearl Jam, and like No Doubt played there, and just like this place, it was like, it wasn't very big. It only held maybe 250, maybe not even 3, probably 250 at the most. And it was just this old wooden like barn looking place. It was like a bar, not a bar. It was just, and it was right next to the college, and it was just a really cool vibe in there. And so bands, when they were traveling across, from Oregon to LA, Sacto was really the only place in the between. That was Cattle Club's like the only really place you could fit, like, a medium to smaller band because we didn't have
like
a lot
a few
of venues.
Hundred maybe.
Yeah. So a lot of these bands coming through, they weren't really popular yet at the time. So it was like the perfect place for them.
And that's the best time to see those bands. It's kind of like our Mason Jar. That was our Mason Jar.
Pretty much. Yeah. So, but it was not only were like national acts coming through, but the local scene was just killing it. Like, I mean, Deftones was eventually started becoming the headliner, and then Far became a headliner, and then we eventually became a headliner a little bit way after that. But there were also other bands like Funky Blue Velvet that was from Sacramento that I totally loved, and then you had Socialistics, which Frank Delgado was a DJ of. They were a hip hop band that played all the time that people go see. And then there was just a lot of band, and Cake, of course, was coming from there, and Papa Roach played a lot in that club. So it was just this club. It just had this amazing energy and these bands, and like you would go there on the weekend, not even if you didn't know the band playing, you would just go there to hang with your buddies. So, and it was all ages. So us, you know, when me and Sean were hanging out, we were only 18, 19 years old, so we couldn't go to bars. So we would go to the Cattle Club and hang out and go watch bands and go see our friends. So it was more than venue. It was like a hangout spot for everybody. But at the same time, if you're a band, you can, you know, hone your craft there too, and just play in front of a big audience, because like people would just go to go. They wouldn't care who was playing. So, I mean, and then some of the shows were just insane. Like when Deftones would headline, it would just be crazy sold out. And then Deftones and Far would co-headlining there, and it was crazy.
God damn.
Yeah, it was fun. But the funniest thing was like Deftones and Far would sell out. They would try to fit like 500 people in there. It was insane. It was stupid.
It's like a fire hazard.
Pretty much, yeah. And so Cannibal Corpse was playing there, and I'm like, okay, like no one's gonna be there. It's like Cannibal Corpse. No one knows Cannibal Corpse. So I didn't think it would be that. I went there, and that was the most sold out I've ever seen the Cattle Club.
Oh,
I was
yeah.
like, where are these people coming from? Like, how does anybody know about Cannibal Corpse? That it was like I couldn't even get in the door. That's how packed it was. I finally snuck my way through in there, but I was like, oh my god, so it was just amazing.
Was it pretty dope the first time you got to play there?
Yeah, it's funny because that was my goal starting Will Haven. Like I didn't even think we were going to leave Sacramento. So I was like, all right, let's just play the Cattle Club. That's my goal. I just want to play there because that's like the most iconic place in Sacramento. And we ended up, our first show there was with SNFU, which is funny. So we opened up for SNFU, and then like we played like 7 seconds there. We played with some really random bands. And then the Deftones like asked us to Far asked us to open up for them, and the Deftones. And then we eventually got to headline like a couple years later. But yeah, that was my goal, just to play Cattle Club. I don't care what happens after that. Like my dreams are made. So yeah, that place was
Did the show go well that first time?
No. Oh, you know what? That was the first show there. Our first show ever was with Earth Crisis.
Wow.
Yeah. A friend of ours was booking hardcore bands, and he's like, "Hey, Earth Crisis is coming through. You guys should open." And it was at this theater. So it was like this 500 seat theater, and it was probably half full because it was the first time Earth Crisis had been through. So not a lot of people knew who they were, but that was our first show opening for Earth Crisis. So, and then our first show at Cattle Club was with SNFU. So. Yeah, the Earth Crisis was okay, but the SNFU kids didn't like us at all. So
fuck them.
It was fun. It was cool.
I'm actually going to steal your question because you asked Jonah this. Do you have a good Chi Cheng story that you could share?
Tons of them. Yeah, Chi was a special. I can't even say he was like an energy. Like it was just something special about him. You know, I mean, there's certain people in this world that are just like. Are they supposed to be here? Are they not supposed to be here? They're just like these, they're like more like light than they are humans. And he was just one of those people that just like, I mean, I've known Deftones guys forever. And I'd go see them at a show. And the first person I'd see would be Chi. And he would come up and give me the biggest hug and just was so welcoming and like just so loving. And it was just so amazing. And so he was always been like, kind of like he was always like the big brother of the band, and so when him and Chino had lived together, they lived together for a long time at this apartment. And I'd go to their apartment, and he was always like kind of the protector and looking after us. And he didn't skateboard with us and stuff, but he was always there, and just kind of like just always welcoming and let me sleep on his couch all the time. And so I have a couple stories. We had toured with Deftones in 2006 on the Saturday Night Wrist tour, and we did a European run with them. And it was just kind of a weird tour for us because when we got there, we had we had a van, but it sucked. It kept breaking down. It was horrible. And we were just having a rough time on that trip, and Chi kind of felt bad for us. And so the last show of the tour was in Amsterdam, and we were kind of just hanging out in the back. And Chi walks up, and he's like, "Hey, man." Hey, he's all, "Get your guys together." So we all got together, and he's like, "Hey, I got you guys this present." And so we basically opened up this thing and gave us all a box. And we opened up the box, and they were like these awesome knives, like not switchblades, but kind of switchblades. They were just like beautiful knives that he went and bought. And he got us each one of the band one. He's like, "I just want to give you guys each one of these because if I can't protect you, somebody has to. So these are going to protect you if I can't be here to protect you guys." And I was like, cool. "Oh man, that's so rad." Yeah, he just went out of his way shopping to go buy us a present. And I just thought that was like, that's just how he is. He was so kind and so awesome. And then,
That's bad.
yeah, and then I heard another story. They were, I think they were touring in Europe somewhere. And when you play in Europe, you know, kids don't drive to the shows. They take trains to the shows. So, and Deftones, they have the headline. So when they get over, it's pretty late at night, and a lot of kids just got to run to the train to get home. And so Deftones had played, and they're hanging out backstage, and then finally they go to the bus, and there's like one kid out there that he just was stuck it out, you know. So he's standing there, and Chi walks out, and he's like, hey, what's going on? And the kid's like, hi, man, I just wanted to meet you. Like, you're my favorite band in the world. I had to meet you guys. Like, I can't let this opportunity go by if I can't meet you. And it was like 4 a.m. or 3 a.m. It was bus call, and Chi's all, you know, you have a ride home? He's like, no, I missed my train. You know, it was like at 2:00. That was the last train out. So, but I could not see you guys. And she's like, oh man, I feel bad about that. He's always, he signs his stuff and talks to her for a little bit. And she's like, hold on, man, 1 minute. So Chi goes to the bus, comes back, brings his pillow and all his blankets on his bunk and gives it to the kid. And he says, hey man, like, I wish I could help you out, but I at least keep you warm. And if you find a place to sleep, you know, here, at least have a pillow and like blankets keep you warm to wait till the next train. And the kid's, oh man, the kid was like crying and it's legit.
That's
and so,
cool.
Yeah, and she's like, yeah, man. So she had no bed, no pillow, no blanket that night, but he gave to that kid off the bus.
He's just very selfless.
Yeah, he's just the sweetest guy ever. But he had two sides of him. He could be a terror too. Like we've had some crazy nights with him and his brother.
Well, it's like all of us, right?
Yeah, and his brother was his bass tech for a long time, Ming, and those two would get together and just cause chaos. But it was entertaining though. It was like so much fun. So he could be the Tasmanian devil and be the sweetest guy in the world. But that's just Chi, and that's why we loved him so much. And he was just a special guy. And you know, I got to go see him right after his accident in the hospital, and that was pretty heartbreaking to see him that way. And then I became pretty close to his mom after that, and I went to see him pretty much every weekend for a couple of years when he was in San Francisco, and just spend time with him, hold his hand, just see if he could, you know, engage somehow. And you know, I tried to just be there for him because I mean, he was pretty much he was there by himself for a long time. You know, his mom would be there with him every day. God bless his mom; she was so awesome, and his family. And so, but I don't think a lot of his friends had gone down, and so I was just trying to spend some time with them and see if he was making progress and stuff. And then you know, I got the phone call that he passed, you know, and it was just heartbreaking. But yeah, it just sucks because he was just a beautiful dude, and I love that guy.
It's you know, that saying, that cheesy saying that they, you know, God always takes the best first. You know, you think it's cheesy and this and that, but there's certain people, and we have a really good friend, his name was Soggy, that kind of, the way you explained it, how Chi is, and a lot of people explain it how Chi is, he's just this really, really kind energy that's willing to help any way he can, whenever he can. But then, you know, he also has another side to him, like where you just, you know, he can do what he needs to do when he has to do it. But and we lost him really early too. Same type of thing, man. It's just I think that
as you get older, that becomes more true.
Yeah.
You know, the people that you lose are like, fuck.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's like there's people that are just angels on earth, and maybe, like I said, they're not supposed to be here or something.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, you know, with Taylor Hawkins passing, you know, I didn't know. I always admired him, and I thought he was a badass, but I didn't really know his backstory too much. And then you hear all these stories about how awesome he was to kids, and like even his own son. Like I was telling my girlfriend this, is that I guess when Foo Fighters would play on tour, he would take his son Shane with him, and he would set up a little drum set behind the drum riser. And so Shane was like 7 years old, be playing drums with the Foo Fighters playing on stage, and he has headphones on, just playing along with his dad. And
That's
like,
bad as fuck.
yeah, it's like,
what a cool dad.
Yeah, it's like
you never hear about that shit.
Yeah,
you know?
totally. And and then he just. So I was like, God damn, Taylor was just like a beautiful dude. Like he just, what happened? Like, why would he have to leave? Like
we talked about that on here on the recent episode, because we're not the biggest Foo Fighter fans, but like we both got choked up the morning that I found that shit.
Yeah,
out.
I mean, if you go back and like, he had that new band NHC with David Navarro and Chris Chaney, and like that stuff's awesome. It's like, dude, this dude was like insanely talented.
Yeah, you can
like
sing like a motherfucker.
Yeah, like he
totally.
could be his own band if he wanted to, and just destroy anybody, you know. And it's like, why does that talent have to leave so early, you know? And plus, he's just an awesome dude, you know. Wasn't very humble, you know. Didn't think of himself as a rock star. He was just so blessed to be like meeting his idols and playing with his idols, and just always starstruck. Even though he was Taylor Hawkins, he was like, even David Navarro was like, oh my god, I'm playing with David Navarro. You know, it's like,
yeah.
I just love those kind of people like that.
Yeah, that's another perfect example.
Yeah,
with a lot of bands, like you're closer than family sometimes, man. I couldn't imagine having to lose one brother, yet alone two, like Dave Grohl has. And you know,
well, especially that band, the Foo Fighters, they were so tight. Like all of them, they were all just super friendly and like loved each other. And it's like, yeah, to lose somebody like, especially Taylor was like kind of it seems to me like glue that kind of kept them together. Like I heard a good quote that day. It said Dave was the heart of the Foo Fighters, but Taylor was the rock star.
Yep.
And that's, it's like pretty much how it was. Yeah.
There was this video this clip that I saw like the morning after he passed that really, really had me choke up. It was just a weird clip where they were playing at a show and Dave's voice went out and
Taylor backed him up.
Taylor backed him. And I was just like, man, that was fucking awesome.
Yeah.
But it just sad shit, man.
Yeah. It sucks.
Yeah.
Just to be straight up, like we're both two fucking former heroin addicts, so it's even like hits closer to home because he was a former addict, you know what I mean, and even overdosed. So it's like I don't even want to know the details because like I'm kind of like worried about, you know.
Yeah, I mean it's like, you know, it just sucks. You really don't know what happened. The end result, he's gone. That's you know, so it doesn't matter really what happened. Unfortunately he's gone. No matter if it was his fault or not. It's like,
yep,
it just sucks. Yeah.
Anyway, when you guys were writing El Diablo, was there like this vibe like this is bad as fuck? Like you like as you're writing it, or like what was the vibe like?
It's funny because like we were writing it, and I was like, I liked it, you know, but I didn't know, you know, like we were all kind of learning our instruments. So I was like, you know, I hope people like this. And I remember playing it in the studio, and our producer, Eric Stemman, who's a really good friend of ours, and he was like, shit's kind of good, you know. I'm like, oh, well, if he says that, okay, it's our first like check mark, you know, okay, he likes it, so that's cool. And Eric's kind of if Eric likes your stuff and you've kind of been approved a little bit because he knows what he's talking about, so I was like, okay. And then we got done with it, and I didn't really show anybody anything, you know. We kept it in house, and I remember we got done, and back then you would leave with a cassette tape. That's how old it was, 97. So I had a cassette tape of the whole record, and it was mixed. I think it was mastered, but it was all mixed, and everything was pretty much done. And so I went to the Deftones practice spot in Sacramento, and they were practicing. And I walked in, and it's like, where you come from? It's like, we just got done recording the record. And he's like, oh, so you got it with you? And I was like, yeah. And he's like, let me hear it. I'm like, oh shit. All right. So I was like, you know, these are my boys. I don't want to be like, I don't like how this shit sucks. I'm like, all right. So I give it to Chino, and he walks over and puts it in the boom box. It's funny. I remember this so vividly because I was just so paranoid. I'm like, oh my God, like if they hate this is going to just break me, you know? And so Chino pops it in, and I'm sitting there, and Stefan's sitting next to me, and then Chi was sitting there, and I think Abe was over somewhere else. And he puts it on, and Stick Up Kid comes on. You know, the beginning of Stick Up Kid, it builds up, whatever, and it comes on, and Stick Up Kid is playing, and Chino's not saying anything. He's just kind of sitting there, just kind of looking at the boombox, like, oh man, he fucking hates it, dude. Like, he's like, this is probably too weird for him, you know? It's like, it is weird, you know? And so it plays and gets done, and then I see My Fate pops on, and that plays, and he still doesn't really say much. I'm like, damn, dude, like, all right, whatever. He probably doesn't like it, whatever. And so Fate gets done, and he stops the set tape, and he's like, dude, that shit's fucking tight. I'm like, really? And he was like, totally just like, dude, that shit's fucking badass. I'm like, oh my God.
Yeah.
He likes it. And then like Stefan like sit next to me, he's like, damn, motherfucker, you guys are like the U2 of metal. I'm like, is that a compliment? And he's like, that shit's tight, dude. I'm like, oh, okay. So it was like, so them just saying that, I was like, okay, like, I don't care what happens after this. Like my peers, my homies, like it, especially the Deftones guys. I always looked up to those guys musically. And I was like, okay, if they like it, all right, I passed the test, you know, like I did something worthwhile. And then, in Sacramento, we had a magazine called Heckler Magazine, which was Big Brother was a part of, and it became pretty big. And Heckler had a lot of our friends that worked in that magazine, and so they'd come out with like their favorite albums of the year, And they'd put El Diablo, most of them had put El Diablo in their albums of the year, and that went out to like all the skaters and everything. So that was kind of like our first, like, oh shit, like people actually are talking about our band. And then I had like went and saw the Deftones in San Francisco at this really small place, bottom of the hill. And I'm just hanging out back, kind of back, sitting by myself. And Chino walks up and he's like, "Hey, you guys want to go on tour?" I'm like, "On tour with you guys? Like, what? Like for a couple shows?" He's like, "No, you guys want to do a U.S. tour?" I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" And he's like, "Yeah." And it was going to be us or Deftones, DJ Shadow, and us.
Oh wow.
Yeah, and I was like, "Oh," and DJ Shadow was like a huge influence on us. I was like, "Oh, that'd be fucking badass."
Fuck yeah.
And so Chino's like, "All right, just call their agent and we'll take you guys out." So I ended up calling their agent, and she's like, "Yeah, Chino, like, why don't you take you guys out?" And I was like, El Diablo had just come out, and Around the Fur had just come out right around the same time. And so ended up, and then DJ Shadow could not do it, so Chino called Jonah or Sean and was like, "Hey, can Far take DJ Shadow's spot?" So it was us, Deftones, and Far.
Wow.
For the first. Far did the first U.S. or half of the U.S. and then Limp Bizkit did the second half. So
Did you guys come to Phoenix for that?
I think
I don't know.
Yeah, that's when we did that place out in a field by Arizona State.
Okay, I must have not gone to that show then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it was
I
us,
remember
Deftones,
that
and Far at that show. And then when we got to New York, Far dropped off and Limp Bizkit hopped on the last leg of the tour. So,
and that's when you guys really started picking up steam, right?
Yeah, it was, well, the U.S. was okay. It's funny because I always say like maybe we were the band that was like at the right place at the wrong time, because we went on these huge tours with Deftones and Slipknot right around the same time. We did the Deftones tour 97, and then we did Slipknot 2000, and both those tours were on basically kind of on their, Around the Fur was out, but they didn't really tour a lot on their own on Adrenaline. So Around the Fur was the first time they actually did their first headlining tours. And so when we did that tour in 97, we were playing pretty small places, like maybe 500 to 600 clubs on the Deftones tour. So our name was getting out there, but it wasn't like really popping, And then we were just kind of, people would react to us in a good way, but it was before internet. So it was like, there was no word of mouth. Yeah. So it was all word of mouth. Like people had to call their buddies, "Hey, if you're in so-and-so, go early and see Will Haven." So it was really hard to get the ball rolling. And we weren't playing in front of a lot of people, so it wasn't like a lot of talk. Everybody was there excited to see the Deftones, so they don't care really who was opening up at the time.
Was there a moment though that that you realized that this was really resonating with people like all around the world?
So halfway through the U.S. tour, Chino pulled me into his hotel room and said, "Hey, we want to take you guys to Europe."
Oh, nice.
And so right after this tour, we're going to Europe. We want you guys open. And we're like, "Yeah, count me in." So, but on that tour, it was only us and Deftones. So we were opening, Deftones were headlining, so there was no opening bands. And so I was like, "Oh, okay, this is going to be awesome." So as soon as we land in there, Kerrang! Magazine wanted to do a feature on us because we were opening up for Deftones. It was like the Deftones' first real headlining tour in Europe, all across Europe. So their opening band, and of course they had told everybody, like, these are our homies from Sacramento. So everybody knew the connection was there. We were friends with Deftones. So a lot of people were like, "Oh, we need to like figure out or find out about Will Haven." So Kerrang! Magazine had brought us into their, or maybe they came to our label or something like that. And so they did this whole article, like a full page article on us, and talked about El Diablo, and we were friends with Deftones. We were opening up for them. There's this big picture of us. So that went out, and everybody was like, "Oh, who's this band opening for Deftones?" And then the tour started in Belgium, and then we did this weird routing through Germany and stuff. And then when we hit our first show in France, so the leg of the tour was in France and England. So it ended. The last show was in London, but as soon as we got to France, we were kind of hanging out backstage when we heard this noise. Like, what the hell is that noise? And so I walk out there, and it was like people were chanting, "Will Haven, Will Haven." And this was probably like in Europe, they were doing close to about maybe 800 to 1,000 capacity. And just Will Haven, like, oh shit, like what is going on? And so I guess the word of mouth had like spread that this tour was just kicking everybody's ass. Like, we were killing it. Deftones were killing it. And everybody's like, "Oh my God, you got to go to the show." Like both bands are just destroying it. So the word of mouth had got around, and kids already knew who we were. They kind of knew, because we put out a single too on a Kerrang! Sampler or something like that. So kids like knew. And so that when that show started, like, oh shit, like, okay, something's like starting to bubble up, And then by the time we got to London, everybody knew who we were, and we were just like killing it. Like some of the reviews, like, you know, Deftones like shouldn't have brought out Will Haven because like they're just killing it. Like, 'cause we were just hungry. Like, all right, we always had this thing. It's like when you're playing with Deftones or Slipknot, you got to come out. You got to come out on fire because those bands are going to destroy on their own.
Well, I was gonna say you guys are pretty fucking intense.
We had to be though, because
you know?
like when you're opening for those bands, like you can't half-ass it. Like no one's gonna remember who you are unless you come out and kill it. So like we had to prove ourselves, you know. And you know, like I said, opening for Deftones and Slipknot, you can't like fuck around. You got to come out and destroy it. So we played our heart outs every single night. And so, you know, by the end of the tour, we're like, okay, like we can relax a little bit. But yeah, France and England's when it started really like, oh shit, like we're actually a real band, like playing, like people actually like us, you know. And so, and that was on our first record. So it was just a whirlwind of like, oh shit, we put out our first record. We don't know what the hell we're doing. We don't even know how to play our instruments. And
That's
now
fucking crazy.
Now we're on a world tour with like Deftones and like, oh, okay, what the hell's going on? And then, you know, and then stuff picked up after that, you know, like just being associated with the Deftones, like, especially back then, like everybody respected that band, you know, because they weren't, you know, they were new metal, but everybody kind of kept them as not new metal. You know, they kind of always gave Deftones their own little spot or a little place.
Definitely, yeah.
And so no one like was like, oh, they're riding the coattails of Korn or Limp Bizkit. Like Deftones have always been their own thing. And everybody respected that. So us being homies with those guys, like, okay, Will Haven's like must be that. They must be cool and doing their own thing because they're on this camp. You know, they're in this.
Deftones are very well respected and like cool band.
Yeah, everybody loves those guys. So
Yeah.
us being associated with them, like Fear Factory took us out because we were friends with those guys, and like, you know, and then Gloria Cavalier ended up managing us after a while, and then, you know, and then we just started getting. And then Gloria got us to Slipknot. Well, Slipknot asked to take us out, but yeah, we just that association, and it's funny the Slipknot tour. Gloria called me up and she's like, hey, Slipknot, when you guys, this is Slipknot's first record. She's all, Slipknot wants to take you guys on tour. I'm like, how the fuck do they know who we are? You know, like how do they know who Will Haven is? So she's like, well, the first show's in Iowa, so you got to leave in 2 days. I'm like, oh, so we had to scramble our shit. We didn't make the first show. We missed it. We ended up catching them in St. Louis. It was our first show on that tour. And I remember walking in going, oh, dude, like, are they going to kick our ass? Like, what is going on here? Like, why are we here?
Like, you've never seen them out under the mask and shit?
No, I didn't know. I didn't never met any of them. I didn't know them. Like, I knew the band because I'd gotten a sample of Eyeless from somebody. And I was like, this band's fucking badass. Like, I love that song.
Oh, for sure.
And so, but I was a fan, but I didn't know the guys at all. And yeah, no one knew who they were then because they all had masks. So no one knew who they were. No one knew their names.
They were mysterious as fuck.
Yeah, and this is their first record. And this was their first really like headlining US. They'd done something with like a Cold Chamber, but this was like their first headlining tour they'd ever done. And so they were playing smaller clubs, right around the same kind of clubs Deftones were on 97. So right around 500, 600 seat clubs. And so I walk in, it was at Pops in St. Louis, and I was like, I walk in, I'm like, all right, who do I talk to? Like, what do they even know we're here? Like, it's
who do I check in with?
Yeah, like, yeah, it's like, it's this band. Like, do we just show up and hop on the tour? No one knows. Like, so I'm standing there, and this guy walks up, and he's like, hey man, are you Will Haven? I'm like, yeah, I'm Jeff. He's like, hey man, I'm Sean. I'm Clown. I'm like, oh, okay. And he's like, yeah, I'm so happy you're here. I'm like, cool. I was like, and I don't know how we got this tour. He's like, whoa. He's like, well, me and Joey, we're at the Nebraska show when you guys opened up for Deftones. And so you guys blew us away. And I was like, and then me and Joey always said, if we do our own headlining tour, we want to take out you guys because you guys destroyed it. I'm like, oh shit. So they saw us on that Deftones tour and remembered us and then took us out when they did their own headlining tour. So
that's fucking amazing.
Well,
yeah,
you kind of talked about it. It was a weird time, you know, right as the internet was kind of starting, and you go find the new bands by going grabbing the New Times or whatever, and going straight to the back and looking for what bands are coming to
You know
play.
where else? In the CD booklet, and you would see what bands would be thanked, and you'd be like, oh, they know these guys, or let's check these bands. Oh, these bands are bad as fuck too. Like,
yeah, and that was something cool about that though. It was like you had to kind of search for stuff and like find stuff and go to shows. Like, I mean, no one knew who Will Haven was unless we went on that tour. You know, we'd just be stuck at home, you know. But being in front of people and playing, and people were talking about it, and like, I mean, it's funny because we do European stuff now, and we play shows, and kids come up to me now they're adults, you know, but now they come up to me like, I was at that show when you guys opened up for Deftones in Newcastle or London, and it's like, that was the best show I've ever seen in my life. And they still talk about it to this day, you know. and they didn't hear it from a friend or they didn't see it on the internet. They're like, they were there, you know, and it's like there was just something special that they can't. So they go see us now, trying to relive that same like thing that they had back in '97, 98. Yeah, it's like it was just so special to them. It's like
no, like us, like we were talking about.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. But yeah, I love that when you had to go search for stuff. And
well, music's just so completely different now. There's also like a cool mysteriousness to bands back then because, you know, not everyone was up on their stories and social media and shit. So if you saw a magazine article or something, you're like, fuck, I want to see what this is about or like what these guys are about. You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. There's just music was so different then.
Well, that's what I loved about Slipknot too, is that, you know, they were good, but they were also had this look that was mysterious. You didn't know. And I love that they didn't say their names.
That's actually a perfect example. I remember seeing a square of them in like Circus Magazine or some shit and being like, who the fuck are these mysterious motherfuckers? And then hearing it and going, holy shit.
Well, it's funny because we were on tour with Soulfly doing a U.S. tour when they were on the first Ozfest. And Ozfest was going through town, and then Soulfly, we were coming through right after Ozfest in the same cities. And so we would show up at a venue and these kids would show up all with Slipknot t-shirts on. And like, you know, they had the masks and stuff. I'm like, who's the fucking Slipknot?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, they were Ozfest. You got to see them. They're so badass. And so we heard the noise forever.
And it just makes you want to check them out.
Yeah. And we're like, who are these guys? Yeah. And then I got I got a Kerrang magazine. And they were like, each member had their own page. And it said, didn't have their names, just said the number. And then kind of talked about like a little bit what their influences were and stuff. And I was like, oh, these guys are fucking cool, man. Like,
they had a sound too that was very, very different and it was amazing.
Yeah, the guitar tone, the way the drummer fucking killed it.
Well, I think it was
like
just
30 members. You're like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I just think it was like, their music was perfect because it was raw, it was emotional, it wasn't overproduced, it was like heavy as hell. And I think that's why when I heard Eyeless, I was like, okay, it's got, you know, like a little trip hop, like drum and bass stuff at the beginning. That's cool.
Yeah, it was definitely original.
And then when they dropped in the dun 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 dun, I was like, oh my fucking god! Like these guys got riffs too. Like
And
I was like, okay, you guys won. And I remember when I met Mick the first night of that tour, I was like, you guys, you got to show me how to play that riff, like just how you play it. And so he taught me how to play Eyeless and stuff. And I was like, okay, that's cool.
Oh, that's dope.
But I was like always intrigued by like Slipknot, how they did it. It was kind of cool.
It's funny because we were talking about this the other day when we were watching Foreign Films 2 that you did. And there's something about Will Haven, the sound of Will Haven, that I call it like the Will Haven vibe. There's not another band out there where you just want to start moving your head, dude. You just like, it's just like you hear it and you can't not stop from just jamming out on it. There's no other band that I know of. And the whole time I'm watching that film, I'm just like, dude, I just want to like rewind it. I want to hear that again. So talk a little bit about doing the foreign film stuff. And
that was badass, dude.
Yeah. So we did the Foreign Films 1. I don't know if you ever saw that one, the original one. Okay. So that one was like, we'd had this idea of doing like a kind of a cool documentary, and our friend Brad Oates, who did the Carpe Diem video, had all this stockpiled of footage of us playing live and stuff. I was like, hey, you should like do like a home video, you know? And he's like, yeah, I can put something together. And so he put something together really quick, and you know, we didn't think anything was going to really happen with it. And then it ended up, we were on a label in Europe and like, hey, we want to put this out. And we're like, oh shit, okay. So Brad had to really scramble, put stuff together, and so it was kind of jumbled, and he had to throw stuff in there he didn't, you know, wasn't sure about. So, and it was mostly, we put that out as like a second two because we had broken up in 2000, was it one or whatever? 2002. Okay. Yeah. So the last show was in Sacramento. So like, okay, we'll record the last show and just have that as a DVD, and then we'll put this like Foreign Films like kind of documentary thing with it. So it was more of just that, of just putting out the last show and having something with it, and then we just sold it as that, so we didn't have it was never online or anything.
Yeah. I got one.
Just real quick, that's mine actually. I think my DVD's at your house.
Yeah.
Oh really? We should. I don't even know if I have one.
Yeah.
So
well, we got to talk about that stuff later because we want to ask you about some of that old cool stuff.
Okay,
but go ahead.
But yeah, so we had that, and then we did this last tour. It was 2019, I think. We went out, and we were doing. We did Download Madrid, and we did a couple headlining shows, and we also did Hellfest. And so this kid, I keep calling him a kid. He's probably a little younger than me. This guy named Dave had reached out to me, and he's like, "Hey, can I go on tour with you guys and film you guys on the road?" I'm like, I don't know. Like, I don't like people coming out with it we don't know. And it's like, it's, you know, we always have.
And video taping.
Yeah, it's like, I don't, it's kind of weird or whatever. And then I found out he'd done stuff with Sepultura and stuff. Like, maybe he has some credentials. So I was like, yeah, meet us at this show and you can film the show. And then we'll just work it out. So he came to the show and I met him. He's like this nicest dude ever. Like, he's so awesome and he fit right in with us. Like, he's just totally cool, humble, mellow. Like, he's a fan of the band. Just nicest guy ever. I'm like, oh, okay, this guy's fucking cool. So like, he actually came on the road with us the rest of the tour and just filmed us. And then he did this little interview at the London show, just backstage, and it was like maybe 15-20 minute interview with each of us. And I didn't ever saw any of the footage though. I just, you know, he did that and he went home and he edited this stuff together and he kind of did this little tour video and he sent it to me and I was like, that's fucking pretty cool. Like, he's pretty badass. And so I was like, you know, we should do like make it more of a documentary, you know, than just like a tour thing. Cause, you know, a lot of people don't really know the history of Will Haven, you know, and so it'd be kind of cool to get back into that and kind of just make Forum Films 1 like a more mature version of it. So he went back and added more stuff and put the interviews in there and stuff. And he showed me, I was like, oh, that's pretty fucking sick, dude. I was like, that's really cool. It makes the band look cool. It's like artsy. It's like, so that was pretty much Dave's brainchild, like putting that all together. He's a badass dude.
Like, can you say his name again?
It's Dave Blackley.
Yeah, he's a bad motherfucker, man.
Yeah, he is.
Great
he's
filmmaker.
Sick. Yeah, he's a good filmmaker. He's done a bunch. He did our When's the Change video. He just did our new video that we're putting out. Yeah, he's kind of like was an asset that just kind of came to us. Like, oh yeah, we have another creative like outlet that we can go to make these cool art pieces.
It's very evil feeling.
Yeah, no, I told him I wanted the creepy vibe. Keep it Will Haven.
It is,
like,
dude.
Yeah.
Like there's these moments, and I think they're called like liminal spaces, where it's just like these weird moments where you kind of feel like you're stuck in time.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot of that stuff. And then you guys will do these cool things with the music where
Edit
you'll be
it.
waiting for a cool breakdown to hit, and then you'll rewind it and you won't even hit the breakdown. You know what I mean? I'll be like, what the? And it was just it was absolutely amazing.
Yeah, the way he edited it was fucking rad. Even with the music that he edited and like the footage, and he just did an awesome job.
Super creative.
Yeah, he's a super creative kid, man. He's really good.
Most documentaries now you see on Netflix are super glossy and, you know, like this was just unique as fuck and it fit Will Haven perfectly.
I mean, I love band documentaries. I think they're awesome.
Oh,
like
even bands I don't like, I enjoy watching the documentary just because I love that behind the scenes.
Yeah,
shit,
I mean, that's one thing I love about Dave Grohl. He's always put out great documentaries. Like the Foo Fighters one's awesome. Sound City's awesome.
City
Yeah,
ones,
so
dope.
yeah, and I was like, yeah, I mean, those are awesome, but I wanted to do something more dark and mysterious and more artsy, and so I was like, Dave, you gotta like just do your thing, man. Like make it cool. So, like,
Who came up with the design for like the album covers and stuff?
So El Diablo WHVN was our friend Jeff Gross, just a friend of ours in Sacramento. Me and Grady had come up with the idea of El Diablo with the we had the mask and we had put Grady in his suit, and then Jeff went around and just started. Jeff's a photographer and he just started filming, like taking pictures of Grady. We took the one in the hallway is at me and Grady's old house because me and him lived together for a while, and then the one in the back is at the Sacramento train station, where he's sitting in the pew, and then the cover. He took a picture of Grady, but he kind of cut off the face, and then he like took a nickel or something. He scratched all the negative or the picture, and then took a picture of that. So that cover is like just scratched out pictures.
I remember when I first saw that cover, I was like, that is fucking evil as hell. I swear to God, man, I remember I was like, that is such a cool cover. It reminded me of when I was a kid, and the first time I was a really young kid and I was going through my uncle's record collection and I saw the Black Sabbath album, the first Black Sabbath album, which just got that witch looking person, and it was so evil. And I remember seeing the cover to El Diablo and just being like, holy shit, this is evil as fuck.
Yeah, when I saw, I was like, oh, that's fucking bad. Because he put it the 3 squares too. And I was like, that's fucking really cool. So he had done that one, and then WHN, he did that where he took a picture of a radio, but he tore it in half and then sewed it together so you can see the red stitches in there. We just got blessed. Like, he's just a really artsy guy and just made him really cool. The Carpe Diem was kind of me, but Carpe Diem was like, it didn't come out the way I wanted it to. Like, we actually had a really cool version of a girl, and then we asked her permission. She said no. So we had to scramble and make another one. It just wasn't the same as the original. The original was rad, but the second version didn't come out that great, but we were kind of on a time frame. So it is what it is. You know, it's still, you know what it is when you see it, which is cool, but it wasn't what I envisioned. And then the last couple records we had friends do it, and the last Morte, our friend Mike Cobra, who he did that. He came up with like a bunch of things, and I saw the hands. Like, let's just do the hands plain, and put that on the black cover. That looked really cool. And then Mike's gonna do our new record too. So we just have just friends of friends that we know have been introduced to. You know, that we just try to find people that have the same vision and like kind of keep. We don't want too glossy, or we don't want like a typical band album. We want to do something kind of where it makes you think, you know, or it's mysterious or kind of dark or something like that.
Do you listen to other music much, or?
God, yeah. I mean, I've been through so many music phases in my life. It's like, you know, growing up, I was into Motley Crue and Michael Jackson, you know, all that stuff. And then Mike, our original bass player, got me into gangster rap. So in high school, I was really into like NWA and, you know, all those gangster rap stuff. We were really deep into it. And then when I met
Brother Lynch.
Brother Lynch, he's Sacramento.
That's Sacramento. Yeah. I love X-Rated and Brother
yeah.
Lynch and all that shit.
Yeah, we were. So I was really into that, and then, but I was always metal was there though.
Yeah.
You know, growing up in Motley Crue, you always find out about Black Sabbath, like Van Halen, like Rat, all that stuff. I was totally into that. So I always had that, but I was into gangster rap, but I still had my metal side. And then, you know, and then I started getting into like, you know, Sepultura and stuff, like early Sepultura. And then when I met, me and Sean became really close. Sean was really into the hardcore straight edge scene. So actually, funny fact is that I don't know if you guys know Victory Records.
Yeah.
Oh, totally. Yeah.
So Sean Lopez, his first band, Inner Strength, was the #1 release on Victory.
Wow.
Which is crazy.
That is crazy.
Yeah.
That's
#1. It was only on vinyl, only on 7-inch, I think. But it was #1 release was Inner Strength, and Sean sang it. Actually, Sean sang in that band. And some of the guys from Inner Strength went on to create what was the initial Baby Afar. But Sean was really into that scene, so they did a bunch of hardcore shows and stuff. So when I met Sean, like he got me into like Gorilla Biscuits and Youth of Today, Inside Out. So the earlier stuff, and then I really got into when Victory was releasing like Bloodlet and Dead Guy, and then Snapcase and Earth Crisis, and I was like, we were way into that scene, and so then I was in that scene. I was still listening to my hip hop, but I was really into that hardcore, and that kind of like was the main. But then I really got hard. I mean, Sean got me into Neurosis and stuff, so I really got into Neurosis. So that was kind of like the basis of Will Haven. Was like I was really into Snapcase and Earth Crisis, but I had this really fun love for Sepultura and Neurosis and Fudge Tunnel and stuff. So that was kind of like the egg of Will Haven. You know, I didn't want to sound like those bands, but I was like those were the things that influenced me at the time. More Neurosis than anybody. So that's kind of how that started, and then after that, it's like the '90s were just a hodgepodge of everything. Like I loved Faith No More was my favorite band. Mr. Bungle was probably my favorite album.
'90s
of all
were
time.
the shit.
Yeah, it's like we would go to shows every night, and so
It's so funny how many people that say that how influential Mike Patton was from people that grew up like in the 80s and 90s.
he's a god. Like I'm Real Thing. Yeah, it was okay. But then when that Bungle record came out, that first one, I was like, holy shit, this dude can sing.
Yeah.
Like he's bad. And that Bungle record is a fucking art piece. It's not even a record, it's a fucking art piece. And then
the
Angel Dust
stuff was crazy.
Yeah, and then Angel Dust came out, and I was like, okay, this band's
Yeah.
this but he's always been fucking amazing. Like he's just a god. He's just one of those guys, the '90s god. You know, it's like you put him on any record, he's gonna make it sound great. You know, and I always thought about Chino. Put Chino on something, he's gonna make it sound great.
Yeah.
There's only a few guys that can do that. You know, and he's one of them. He's probably the godfather of all that. You know.
Do you listen to much music, when you're recording or when you're coming up with new songs? Because the reason I ask is most musicians I talk to, especially when they're in that mode, they really don't listen to a lot of stuff other than what they're listening to or what they're creating.
Yeah, I don't either. I try not to. It was over the years I haven't really listened to a lot of stuff. Like I've kind of.
I think it's because we're all getting older.
Yeah. Well, then it's like if I do this stuff, it's older stuff. You know, like I'm a huge still Jane's Addiction fan and like stuff like that. So I mean, the '90s for me was like that's kind of the epitome of like music for me. So after that, like I've kind of fallen off. I mean, like there's always bands like Meshuggah and stuff like that I'll listen to, but that were of the newer 2000s. But
I'm sure you'll discover more bands when you go on tour and shit, like new metal bands.
Yeah, but as far as writing, like it's funny, I'll go back and listen to old Will Haven stuff, and so kind of get inspired of what we've already created and try not to like copy what we've done. So really, when I go back to write, I go listen to old Will Haven stuff and go, okay, where are we going, and what do I like and what I don't like, and then what do I want to do different than what we did in the past. So yeah, I don't listen to much, and then I'll kind of use Will Haven as a reference.
You brought up you listened to old Will Haven. Let's talk old Will Haven for a second. There was like a 4-song album you guys put out before El Diablo.
Yeah, we had 2 demo tape. We had a 4-song demo tape, or 4 or 5.
It was a 6-song.
Was
I
it
thought.
6?
Oh, maybe
Okay.
6. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. That was our first one we ever put out. It was like just a cassette tape, and then we put a 2-song cassette out that had lab coats and both ways on it. That we actually made because the Deftones let us open up for them in LA, like right when
This is the one I was
before they actually went. Oh yeah. So that one's.
I had this and I fucking lost it because I moved so many times I can't fucking find it.
Yeah, so that was our
Sucks.
7-song EP that we actually really recorded in a studio. That was with Eric Stemman who did El Diablo, and we just had 7 songs. And we just like, let's go. And so that record was recorded to like 7-inch tape. It's like the tiniest tape we could afford. So that's like our first real release, but it was more of just like a demo that we had kind of putting out. And what's funny is we put that out, and we played a show in LA or something like that, and we kind of like, we had this guy named Troy. This guy named Troy was managing Will Haven, or not Will Haven, Far initially. He was our first kind of real manager, Troy Davis. And so Troy was like, hey, I'll help Will Haven out too. You guys, we're all homies, so it's like, I'll help you guys out too. Troy lived in LA, and so he had kind of hookups to like certain clubs and stuff down there. And he started like booking like all the Victory and Revelation bands in LA. And so he let us go down and open up for a couple of Revelation shows. And so we played a show, and then like a week later, Troy was at another show, and this guy came up to him. He's like, hey, like, you've heard of this band Will Haven? And Troy's like, yeah, I manage them. He's like, oh, I just got a job at Revelation. He's like, I want to like maybe sign those guys. I was like, and so he's like, well, I got their, he gave him that 7-song CD, and he took it to Jordan Cooper, and then he called me up, but Troy called me. He's like, hey, you might get a call from Revelation. I'm like, what the fuck? I was like, I was really a big Revelation fan at the time,
Oh, yeah.
and I was like, whoa, okay, like that's kind of cool. And he's like, yeah, this guy came up to me and said, they're looking to sign you guys. So
What was that based off of? Just
I guess like we'd open up a show and like somebody had said something. Maybe one of the guys at Revelation was at the show and said, hey, you should check out Will Haven. So he went back and found Troy or something like that. The only thing was that it was Revelation, but it was Crisis Records. So I guess Walter from Quicksand, it was his label initially. Like he wanted to start his subsidiary of Revelation, but Revelation was going to fund it, but Walter was going to find the bands. And I don't know how much Walter got involved in it, but they had hired a couple other like hardcore guys that were in bands, and Robert was in, I can't remember what band he was in, but he was in a band, and somebody told him about Will Haven, so he got the demo from Troy, and they ended up talking to Jordan and say, hey, let's sign Will Haven to Crisis, which is like the subsidiary of Revelation. And so so that's what Will Haven, El Diablo came out on Crisis Records, so it's like subsidiary Will Haven, Revelation, Crisis. And they were going to try to make Crisis like another hardcore label, but it just didn't really pan out. And so Jordan's like, well, after we put El Diablo, he's like, well, you guys did really well, so WHM will just be on the Star. I'm like, fuck yeah. It's like
dope.
we made the Star. Yeah. But when we re-released when we initially did that 7-song EP, Jordan was like, hey, do you mind if we put the Revelation sticker on there? Because we're going to sign you guys for the next record. Do you mind if we put the Revelation Star on that EP? I'm like, fuck yeah, dude. They have the Star on our like EP. And I was
then
like,
you re-released it, right?
I re-released it. I was like, oh, we made it. Like we made it onto the Star. Like,
Is there any way to get these original ones anywhere?
No.
Yeah, I can't
Like
find
you can
them.
find them on eBay. Like I've seen them for like $100 on there before.
Isn't
Yeah.
that crazy that stuff sells for that much?
Yeah, I'm like, what? That's people are tripping.
Well, it's funny because another
I
thing.
pay it.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Another thing we were talking about is that
We got to get in the Patreon here in a second, but
yeah. the merch that you guys had, and one of them was this. It was like an old school work shirt, and it just had it said Michael on it, and then it had like
Fowler and Brothers.
yeah, and it had Will Haven on the back. Like that was genius. Who came
I was
up with
always
that?
wondering.
So
Did you guys like get that from the what's it called? When you buy used clothes?
Yeah. Buffalo Exchange.
No, Goodwill. Did you get that at Goodwill and then just
Nailed
put
it,
Will Haven
dude.
on the back, or
Totally.
did you? Or is
That's-
that okay?
totally nailed it.
That's genius. Dude.
So yeah, we hit the funny thing is that we initially did that. We would go buy like old shirts or Mike would go buy old shirts at some Goodwill, whatever, and bring them back. He would just he would make his own silk screens at the house and then just silk screen like old shirts, whatever. And then somehow I don't know how we found like somebody giving us like all these old gas station like shirts.
Yep.
And so Mike's like, hey, let's just use these. So we ended up like silk screening those like shirts and like
and I bought one.
it's funny, yeah. And then but I think Vans had like it's stolen our idea or something because I had seen like the gas station shirt with like Vans like the logo on it, but there was like the same shirts that we had. But yeah, that was Mike's genius idea of doing that.
I remember
great.
fucking watching you guys rock the fuck out. I was moshing like crazy and shit. And then I went over to the merch booth and fucking somehow Grady beat me to the merch booth and he was like sweating his balls off and he sold it to me. I was like, man, these guys are bad as fuck.
I mean, it was like those. I mean, the only time we've ever had a crew was like we did a headlining tour in England on like Carpe Diem tour. And that's the only time we ever had a guitar tech and a sound guy. Like every other tour, it's always been the four of us. And it's like we drive our own van, we get load in, we load out, we sell our own merch. We got to sell it with the promoters. Hopefully you get our money, it's like, so we've always been just
Wearing all the
just
hats.
us.
you know?
Yeah, it's always us. And thankfully Grady was like the one that would like take the,
I respected that like a motherfucker because I was in bands at the time too, you know what I mean, and shit. And so like I kind of understood it a little bit.
and we hated selling merch. But Grady's
I'm
like,
sure.
I'll do it. But it was funny because Grady would just get wasted and just try to sell merch and waste it. So I was like, I don't know how much money we've lost over the years, him not like knowing how much it is. But luckily my girlfriend like helps, like she'll go on the road with us and do merch and stuff, which is awesome. He's always have like a really pretty girl doing merch helps instead of Grady,
definitely.
just Grady's sweaty. Yeah, so,
yeah, you probably sell more.
but yeah, I always thought that was cool. Like we always like stick around. We never go backstage. Like during the Deftones where we go hang out at merch booth and talk to people and hang out, sign.
That's
if
cool.
they ask to sign something. So yeah, we've never been like that band. It's like, oh, we're too cool. Or, we're like, no, we're just like everybody else, just here having a good time.
Fuck yeah.
Yeah.
Do you have anything else before we get into the Patreon?
Good to go.
I just wanted to ask a couple more questions, just really
Yeah,
quick.
sure.
Has your guitar gear evolved over time, or has it stayed pretty consistent?
Yeah, it's well.
And do you mind like describing your setup?
Yeah,
for the
for sure.
fellow guitar players out there.
Well, initially, I just probably try to copy Sean, because like Sean had the killer guitar tone back in the day. And then so Sean had a Mesa Boogie power amp. It was a Strategy 400. And then he had an ADA preamp. And then he had Marshall cabs.
Was that for the effects, guitar effects?
Yeah, so he would run his. Yeah, I think pretty much all his guitar effects were from that. He might have had something else, but I remember vividly when I was like watching him, like living with him, going to his room and like seeing his equipment. All right, he's got this, he's got this, he's got this. But it was so expensive, I couldn't afford it at the time. And then for a period of time, Stefan would like stay at my mom's house because my mom moved out. I lived there by myself till she sold the house. So Sean and Stefan would come stay with me all the time and sleep at my house. So I was ended up, and Steph's mom lived way out far away. So Steph didn't want to drag his equipment back and forth at their practice spot. So you leave it at my house. So I was basically storing Stefan's guitar equipment for a long time. So in my living room, I had all of Steph's stuff. So I'd see what he had. And he had like a Marshall amplifier, rack mount amplifier. He had an ADA as well. And then he also had an MP1 preamp, Marshall preamp. So like I saw all of Steph's gear.
Yeah.
So I was like, all right, when I buy my guitar, I got to get this, and I get this. So initially I couldn't afford it. So I got a Marshall head and a cabinet. And this is a funny story. So I was like, okay, I got it. I got a Marshall head and a cabinet. I can rock out now, And I called up Chris Robine from FAR, and I'm like, hey, man, like, let me come over and jam with you. I just got my guitar equipment. I need a drummer to jam with. Yeah, come over. So I wheel my stuff into their practice spot, and Chris is behind his drums. I turn it on. I'm about to like just crank it and like, let's rock, So I start playing it, and Chris starts playing his drums, and I can't hear my guitar at all. I'm like, dude, this sucks. Like Chris plays so hard and so loud. I'm like, I can't play this. Like I can't even hear myself with the drummer. So I sold all that, and I ended up saving my money, and I found a Strategy 500, which is the same Sean had, and I was able to find an ADA. So I had the setup that Sean had, and I used that pretty much for a long time. And then I would add little pedals here and there once in a while. And then so that was pretty much my basic sound for the long. It was an 80A preamp and then a Strategy 500. And then Strategy 500, Mesa just started making them all together. So, and those things weighed like fucking 80 pounds. Like taking those things on tour was just a pain in the ass. And they would break all the time. Fuses would blow. The power switch would blow. Like, and we went on tour with Slipknot. I had blown up and I had to go rent another like power amp. It was a shitty one. And I remember like Mick was like, "Hey, I'll buy that off you." I'm like, "No, I'm not gonna sell it. I'm not gonna sell it." And then Mesa Boogie, like I had taken it to their plant one time, and the guy, I rolled it in. The guy's like, "Oh, you got a 500?" I'm like, "Yeah." He's like, "Oh, dude, like whatever you want, I'll work on this thing for free. Like we don't make these anymore. Like this is like a gym, you know, like." He's all, "I'll just do whatever. I'll replace the tubes, whatever you need for free." I'm like, "Fuck yeah!" And he gave me an account number too. So anytime I go into Mesa Boogie, like I get anything I want for free, like
just because it's this rare amp.
Yeah, he's like, "Dude, it's so rad." And I remember like he was fixing it, and he called me up like 3 days later, and he's like, "Hey, I have a question for you." I'm like, "Yeah," and he's like, "Would you want to sell this?" I'm like, "Nah, not really. Like I know it's pretty rare. I know it's a bitch to carry around, but like it's one of a kind. I don't really want to get rid of it." He's like, "Well, if you ever want to, Billy Corgan was just in here and he saw it and he wants to buy it from you." And I'm like, "Ooh, no, I'm gonna keep it." So I ended up keeping it. Like he was trying to buy it from me, so I was like, everybody wanted this amp so bad.
Do you still have it?
No, I ended up selling it. Like it was just like, it was just so much. I was like fed up with it. I'm like, dude, this thing's gonna blow up. It's heavy as fuck. Like it's like just too much. So I ended up selling it. I actually told the kid like, okay, it's a Will Haven artifact. Like El Diablo, WG, all the records have been played on this amp, and like the kid bought it, and so. I don't know if you ever play. I think you might just stick it somewhere. He didn't want to play it either, but so yeah. Then now like because mostly of our shows have just been overseas, and like trying to get equipment overseas is just a pain in the ass.
So you don't bring your own gear, right? You get gear there that you rent, or
we rent cabs, but I was trying to bring whatever I could to match my tone here. So I ended up buying a Matrix power amp. They're solid state, but they're fucking amazing. If you ever look, Matrix power amps are sick. They're loud as hell, and they're like lightweight, and they're just awesome. So, and Metallica plays Matrix now too, the power amps. And then so I was trying to find something else to go with that because I hate carrying shit. And my 80As they're old. They were made in the 90s, and so taking them on the plane, like those guys destroy those things. Like they break off the knobs and like the shit. Yeah, it's like, so you come up, they're all bent, and like some days they don't work, and like, fuck, dude, I can't keep taking these because they're just gonna get hammered, and like they're too old to take this abuse. So I've been trying to find something to replace that, and then I called up Stefan. I'm like, "Dude, what are you using now?" You know, because he changes his shit all the time. He's like, "Well, I just bought the Helix."
Oh yeah,
the Helix, yeah. And I was like, "Oh," he's like, "You should look into it. You're gonna fucking love it." So I was like, I looked in. It's like, "Oh, that's kind of cool. It's just a pedal." And you could put all your settings in that pedal.
Mike just got one of those.
Yeah, and I was like, all right. So I ended up buying. I called Steph. I was like, all right, man, I bought it. He's like, dude, you're gonna fucking love it, dude. I swear to God. If I would have had this like 10 years ago, I would have never used anything else. So I got it, and I was like, I can't figure it. I'm not technical savvy at all. I'm like, this thing's fucking hard to use.
Yeah, technology's amazing, but it is a bitch.
It's a bitch, and this thing's like, once you get it, but there's so much shit you can do with it. So I had my friend Sean help me like put it all together, and he got one too. So he helped me like we fix it together, but. This I could just stick it in my suitcase, and so I have my whole rig in that Helix, so I don't have to worry about amps and shit. So I still have my Matrix and my 80As, and I don't think I can ever match that tone. But for touring wise, I'll just take the Matrix with me, and because you can run it, you can run it through cabs, or you can also run it direct into the house. And
do you do both or one or the other?
You can do both. You can split. I think Stefan splits it. I think he has stage volume, but he also runs the mains, which sounds killer. But we don't play those type of big places like they do, so I kind of have to run mine through cabs still to get so everybody can hear me on stage, and then the first couple of rows of people can hear. So, but yeah, so 80A and Mesa Boogie has always been like my go-to.
And then what about guitars? Is there a guitar that you stick to? Or
initially, I was playing ESP for a long time because Stefan hooked me up with ESP, so I was kind of an artist on ESP for a while. But I initially started playing ESP when they had like the neck throughs. They were the M2s. They were just made so good. They sounded so killer. But then they went to the LTDs, and the LTDs were not, to me, weren't as good as the originals. They were like, I think just a little cheaper wood or something. You just weren't as heavy and like just as solid as the originals. And so I was like, so I went and bought an SG and SG Special. because we were touring a lot, and ESPs are really expensive, and like, you know, we didn't have like road cases and shit, so my guitar would just get hammered. Like every time I go on tour, like, my beautiful ESP would just get, and those guitars are beautiful guitars.
Yeah.
And I'm like, this shit's getting fucked up. Like, so I went and bought a SG special. I was like, well, if I take that and break it, I don't care. You know, like it was like $500, and it still sounds decent.
Yeah, they're dope for $500.
Yeah, and Seymour Duncan had made this tremolo distortion pickup, and I bought a bunch of them, and I've actually had the same pickups for like 25 years. I just keep rotating them in. I have like 5 of them. I keep rotating. Every time I buy a new guitar, I put it in there, and it sounds so fucking
Why
good.
is the word tremolo in the word of the pickup? Does it make that the tremolo effect?
I think I think when they initially made it was for the tremolo, because tremolos were huge back in the 90s, so that was for that. But then they actually discontinued them. It was funny because like I had called Seymour Duncan, and I was like, hey, like, do you guys make these anymore? Like, no, we don't make these anymore. And so, well, let me give you this number. Kelly was like the rep for Seymour Duncan. So we'll give you a number to Kelly. She left. And so I called Kelly, and I'm like, hey, I played these distortion tremolos. She's like, oh yeah, we don't make these anymore. She's all, but I have like 4 left here. Do you want them? I'm like, fuck yeah. She's like, oh, I'll send them to you. So she sent them for free, just 4 of them. Yeah. So I have a bunch of those. So any guitar I get, I just stick those in there. And there's something about them. It's like they're heavy and loud, but they don't. There's not a lot of like dirtiness to it. It's really clean sounding. So I don't know what they did to it, but what the coils are, but it's very clean sounding, which I love. I don't like a lot of like that. I want it to be clean, heavy but clean, and those pickups do that. So
is it always been 6-string guitars then?
Yeah, I played.
But so how low do you go for tuning? Like, what's the lowest you've tuned?
I think our newest record. Well, let's see. Yeah, it's been kind of weird. We have when I start writing shit, I fuck with tunings a little bit, but I always just was fucking with the top string or the low string. So El Diablo's all in D.
Just drop D or
just standard E tuning of drop D.
Oh, okay.
I see my fate is actually C sharp, drop to B. So C sharp tuning and then drop to B. I learned that from Cannibal Corpse, or stole that from Cannibal Corpse. So I think just I see my fate and foreign film is drop B, and the rest is all D. And then
even on Muerte, that sounds like you tuned low.
No,
as fuck
Muerte. So I started doing this on.
Is that the dog?
Yeah. I'll go check on them real quick.
So what started with I started with Vor Dire is that I tuned it to B. Well, a lot of our songs were drop B, and then Vor Dire I dropped the low string to match the second string, which was F sharp.
God damn.
So yeah, so it's F sharp, and then the rest are all C sharp tuning. So just the two but it makes some fucked up weird noises, and like
that's what I say. Isn't the string like super flimsy? Like,
it is. It totally is, but like it's not a normal chord either. So you kind of mess with it. And so when I did Morte, I tuned it to standard E tuning, but then I dropped the top to match the second, so it's AA.
Oh, I see.
So just to kind of just give it a little weird like feel to it, and like make me like kind of try to do different things. And then our new record is in G sharp.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, all 6-string, but I had to go to like a 13 gauge. Like the top string is like a 62, I think.
Oh,
so,
shit.
Yeah, so my guitars are taking a fucking beating, but I just like screwing with tunings. Like for me, it's like you can have a guitar and then play it and then tune it a different way, and it'll sound completely different.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, so it's good inspiration, like change shit, you know.
Last thing I just want to talk about, like you mentioned, you writing your new album, recording your new album, and you have a new video coming out. Is there any details you can give us about that, or?
Yeah, it's been we started we came home in 2019. We did a tour, and we came home. We're like, oh, you guys want to do another record? And we're like, yeah, be kind of cool. So we started like
just really quick. So is that typically how a Will Haven album is born? Like you guys are just like let's just start a new one. Like
it's I mean it's kind of mostly up to, I kind of leave it up to Grady, because you know, for a long time he was kind of like in and out of the band and wasn't sure if he wanted to do it, and then wanted to do it, and you know he has kids and he has a life, so it's like, and he's probably the one that has the hardest time getting time off to go on tour and stuff. So it's like I kind of leave it up to him. Like, all right, if you're really into this, we can make it happen. And so
you're good, bro.
yeah, so I just kind of let him like kind of determine, because me and Mitch and Adrian are always going to do something together. Like we're always going to play music, no matter if it's Will Haven or not Will Haven. So we always have kind of like side projects and stuff that we want to do for fun. But if Grady's in, I mean, I'd rather do Will Haven is my first priority. But so I kind of leave it up to him, and I'm like, hey, do you want to do the record? And he's like, yeah, I'm in. So after he gives me that okay, then I'm like, okay, now I start brainstorming like, oh, what do I want to do? What do I want to sound like? So
Writing riffs and shit.
yeah, so we actually had this project called American Czar that we had done a long, like fucking, I mean, this is like 15 years ago. I mean, it was just straight like kind of metal, death metal kind of fun stuff. And I was like, you know what? And we never released anything, but the songs were pretty fucking sick. And so I was like, you know what? I want to fucking pull that shit back out and see if I can work with some of that. And I was like, because Morte is it's kind of noisy. I mean, there's some riffs on there, but it's really noisy and kind of like atmospheric. And I was like, and being in Sock, like I love Sock, and I kind of wanted to pay tribute to like what me and Sean had done in the past. And so I was like, all right, we just need an album of riffs, like we haven't really done albums with just riffs, like metal riffs, like we've always kind of done this like noisy kind of neurosy kind of thing. I was like, I just want to come out and just kick ass, just riffs and riffs. So I kind of taken a lot of that stuff from American Czar ideas and rearranged stuff, and then wrote a whole bunch of new stuff. And so I had this envision. I was like, all right, we just want to make this kind of crazy, heavy ass riff record, something we haven't really done before. Yeah. And so, I mean, there's a lot. It's cool because there's a lot of heavy just riffs on it, just what Lopez would probably write if he was in the band. But then there's also the normal Will Haven, just like there's some really beautiful atmospheric stuff that comes in and out. And so, and it appeals to Will Haven fans, but it's definitely different than Morte. But it's Will Haven, but it's definitely something we haven't really kind of
you don't
explored.
want your new album to be
no,
the same
totally.
as the
We
last
want to do
one.
something.
No, I'm pumped.
Yeah.
No,
and in a
shit.
band like us, it's like we're not selling records, so it's not like there's no pressure on us to do anything. It's like, yeah, you want to keep your legacy going and keep people like, oh shit, Will Haven, but at the same time, we're like, we're in a band to have fun and make music. And so
definitely.
For me though, personally, I love this record. Like I could, if I wasn't in the band, I'd put it on and rock it all the time. Like it's just heavy as shit. And it's like, I love the riffs, and it's funny because Code Orange is kind of the one band, like when they did their, not this record, was their first record? When they put that out and they had some of the riffs on there, I'm like, oh, fucking cool. Bands like a newer band's kind of bringing back the old 90s riff kind of stuff. I was like, it's kind of cool. So, and then they kind of veered off into like their industrial kind of stuff, which is cool. It's rad. But I was like, okay, I want to bring back, because I'm a 90s kid. Like I want to bring that shit back, So that was my like, all right, I'm going to bring this shit back and just make a fucking heavy ass riff record, kind of in the vein of Sock. And so.
How far along are you on the recording process?
The music, it's funny because like with COVID, like we couldn't really do anything. And then our friend who's doing the record, Joe, he's like, yeah, I'm open. So if you guys want to come record, like I ain't closing for COVID. So we would go in, spend a couple days, record stuff, and then come hop back and forth. So, and then we took some time off. And then usually for me, like if we take time off on a record, I'll go back and listen to old stuff that we recorded and go like, all right, I can change this, I can change this, I can do this, I can add stuff here. So it's always been just kind of morphing into things. We have one song completely done, mastered, mixed, everything. It'll be our first single. It'll come out, I don't know, probably in maybe 3-4 weeks. It'll come out.
Sick.
And then Grady has a lot of the vocals to finish on most of the songs. And then I'm going to add a couple other like layers to stuff. But I would say 95% of the record's all done. And we're just kind of finishing Grady and then adding stuff into it. So I think hopefully by fall the whole thing will come out. But I wanted to like kind of waterfall stuff. Like wanted to put out a single and then another single and then
definitely just trickle it.
Yeah, I wanted to, but I don't know if the guy that wants to put it out wants to do that. So
the way that music is released nowadays is so different than how it was released, back before Spotify,
like waiting in line at Zia,
iTunes, so like I don't think back then you could have dropped 1 or 2 songs at a time. Now you can just drop songs at a 1 or 2 at a time every couple months or something.
Yeah, and for me too, it's like I've heard some amazing records. Like the last Deftones record, I fucking love that record. And it's like you listen to it for the first week or two, and then you forget about it.
Yeah.
But
totally.
every song there's fucking awesome. And I was like, that kind of sucks. Yeah, all these bands put all this work and energy into this thing, and people are like, let's do it for like a couple days. Like, and then what's next? You know? But back in the day, in the 90s, all we had was music, so you just listen to the whole record.
Yeah.
Like, oh my God, this thing's fucking amazing.
Maybe I'm different because when I hear a new album that I love, I'll listen to that thing every fucking day for like 3 years straight. Like,
yeah, but you're probably a true music fan though. Like I would do that too. Like I said when the Ohms record came out, I didn't hear anything from before. Like I was like, I tell Abe, I don't want to hear anything until it's out, no until it's done. And I got the record and I put it on, just sat on my couch, and I was like, dude, this fucking thing's awesome, you know? So I do that too, but a lot of people don't. They're so busy in their lives and they got shit going on. It's like, and for me, it's like, I get excited when a band puts out a single. I'm like, all right, I'm gonna go listen to it. And they're like, okay. And then they'll put out another one. I'm like, oh, I want to go listen to it. Like their new one, because the last one was rad ads. So it's one of those, like, I love the waterfall effect. You just kind of keep hitting people.
Yeah.
And especially a band like us, it's like, you know, we don't have the same push that, like, you know, Deftones do or whatever big bands out there, like the push on the label and everything. Like, we're an underground band. So for us to keep interest or people to know who we are, we got to kind of continue, like, kind of put stuff out there that people know that we're active. And that's kind of a hard thing for us to do, is like, people will go like, oh shit, Will Haven's new record, or anticipating a new Will Haven record. So it's, for us, it's like whatever content we can keep putting out, it helps us, instead of just putting something out big, because we're not going to tour in the US, like a full US tour. So that's kind of the only way to really get.
What does a US tour look like for you guys now?
It's pretty much impossible. Like, I mean,
why is that?
Well, we're on a small independent label, and so they don't really have the funding to like support a whole US tour. And then it's so much money. Like,
yeah.
I mean, we're going to Europe. We're doing Download in England in June, and we're doing a Carpe Diem show in London, and that's probably going to sell out. And then we're doing one other show. So I mean, we do well over there, but we're probably barely going to break even. And that's with sold out shows and everything, like our plane flights, you know, like our van rental, our equipment rental, our Airbnb we got to stay in, or hotels, whatever we're going to do. Like it's, I mean, we're probably putting out $12,000 of our own money just to get there.
So I think that's why it's important to bring up the best way to support a band is buying merch, right?
Yeah.
So I mean, fucking when you go to see Will Haven in Europe, buy as much merch as fucking possible.
That's the only way. Like when we did the tour of Deftones in '97, we were on Revelation, but they weren't giving us any. I mean, I think Jordan gave us like $6,000 for like 4 months of touring with Deftones.
Wow.
So, and that we had to cover everything, the gas, buy our own merch or whatever. The only way we survived was for the merchandise. Like, we sold a shitload of CDs, but we were only selling for like $10, you know, but we sold a shitload of CDs and t-shirts. And that was the only thing that made, like, we bought us, you know, got us, we actually slept on, I would sleep in Chi and Frank's room every night in their hotel. Like, they were nice enough to let me crash because we didn't have a place to stay. We were in a shitty ass like RV. And so it had no heater and anything. So Frank and we would all just sleep in Frank and Chi's room. They're like, yeah, just crash in our room. We don't want you guys fucking freezing. Thank God those guys are fucking saviors.
Yeah.
So yeah, we would just sleep in their room. So we never had a hotel. We'd sleep in their room, and then we had to pay for our gas and then food. And that was basically our main expenses. And the merch was the only reason we were able to like eat at night. And so yeah, you're exactly right. For a band like opening band, like that doesn't get, I mean, people don't know, opening band probably get maybe $100 a night. You know, if you're like one of the, I mean, we were getting $100 a night on the Deftones tour. Yeah. So that's, I mean, that's nothing, you know, especially nowadays, that's barely even a full tank of gas, you know?
No
so
shit.
I'm sure bands getting a little more now, but yeah, it's like, it's people don't understand. Like, everybody thinks, oh, you guys are on the label, or you guys are, you know, I was like, no. Like, we have to pay everything. We have to front the money first and then hopefully make it back off shows and merch or whatever. I mean, all my friends' bands are like that, you know?
So a lot of it has kind of become like, this is your time to hang out with your friends and just go have a vacation.
It's a boys' vacation. Yeah. Yeah. But it's cool. It's Will Haven's in a really cool thing, because like, it isn't our main job. So it's not, there's no pressure. There's no, like, we don't have to pay the bills with it. You know, it's like we can save up some capital and then, you know, go out on, do a few shows, then come home. So like, we get to live the rock star thing, but then we don't. When we come home, we're not rock stars at all. We're just totally, you know, we're human beings. So like, we have these double lives. Like, okay, we have Will Haven, which is a just fun thing we get to do, but then we come home and then we're just a normal person, you know? So it's like there's no, like, I know Deftones guys, they got bills and stuff they got to worry about. They got to tour. Like during COVID, they weren't touring, and like it's stressful because like that's their income. And for us, like it doesn't bother us. We can go record a record. We don't care. So it's a different world. People don't understand like music doesn't pay the bills. Like I don't think Deftones aren't rich. You know, they're not millionaires.
I think it's just hard to make money in music in general,
it's
even for the
been,
bigger bands.
It's always been super hard unless you had a hit or something or had a major label just like push. I mean, you got to think these bands are like, I mean, Korn, they've been on the road for like fucking all.
Yeah, for
the last 2 years, you know, it's like they need to make money. It's like the only way to make money is going on tour, you know, and it's hard. It's a hard life, man. It's like, I don't know if sometimes I could have done it. And I feel blessed to be able to like do it, but then step back from it and not have to worry about that, because I've seen the stresses and all the shit that those bands go through, and like it takes one member to blow that whole fucking thing up too. It's not like I mean, one member leaves and all of a sudden the band just tanks, you know, because like it's not the same chemistry. It's not like it's.
I think that's what's cool about you guys is how you say you guys are best friends even before band members. Because the hardest thing about being in a band is just keeping a good relationship with all the band members. Not necessarily you with all the other band members, but them fighting and them bickering, and you know what I mean. There's so many things out of your control.
And we've always kept it that way. Like, I mean, we've had members come and go, but the one thing about Sacramento is that there's so many good musicians there, and we're all pretty tight. Like, we're all really good friends. So even if like a member couldn't go on tour or a member left, like I call up one of my friends and go, hey, like can you play bass on this tour? Can you do this? And I'm like, yeah, I can do it. And like, so they come into the mix. It's not like, oh, it's just we hired some dude or whatever. It's like we've been friends with these guys for 20 years. So that's the thing about Sacramento is like so many great musicians there, and we're all such a cool, tight knit circle that we could do that, you know, and still be all best friends hanging out, still go play music together, you know. And that's cool. Yeah, it's pretty cool. But we've always kept it in house. Like we never really like, hey, we need to put an ad in the paper or something like that. Yeah, never. I've always been able to call my homies and do it.
That's dope. So the only way to see Will Haven live right now is if you go to Europe.
I mean, in 2019 we did a West Coast tour. We did Seattle, Portland, LA, San Diego, and then we did when we flew to New York. We did one show in New York. We hadn't been there in like 24 years, something like that. And this guy's like, hey, I want to bring Will Haven over. So we ended up playing St. Vitus Bar, which is like a legendary bar in Brooklyn. And we played, and it was actually a really good show. I was really worried because I hadn't been there in 24 years. Yeah. And it was crazy because it was the very last night of Game of Thrones. It was on a Sunday night. It was the last episode of Game of Thrones. I'm like, oh man, and no one no one wanted to leave their house.
Even you were like, I kind of want to go see Game of Thrones.
Yeah. So, but actually, the show was really. I mean, it held like 500. We probably got like 300 in there. So it wasn't sold out, but it was like a good mixed feel for not like wanting to leave the house on a Sunday night. So, so that was really cool, and they want to bring us back. So I mean, we're gonna be trying to like pick our spots.
Maybe like little mini tours kind of.
Yeah, just like kind of hit stuff here and there and just see what opportunities come to us. It's like, you know, we always try to ride the wave of the record. Like if the record does good, people talk about it, then we'll like try to hit a town that we know people that will go to shows. So,
well, I don't know if you ever have plans on coming to Phoenix, but if you ever do, let me know, because we have a group of homies of about 10 deep that have been listening to you guys for the past 25 years. I'll definitely go and we'll talk about on the show and promote the fuck out of it.
That'd be awesome.
Yeah,
sure, so. I mean, we'd love to come back here and like and just do rant and stuff. Like, it's hard because we don't know, we can't gauge our fan base.
Is that the GoPro?
Yeah.
Okay. Sorry.
Yeah, we don't know can't gauge our fan base because we don't tour a lot, so we don't know like if we hit a city if it's gonna be people or not. So it's kind of just hit and miss. So we just kind of go to cities that we know that we might be people there, but hopefully we'll just pop up somewhere. I mean, I'd love to do like another support somebody though. Like we were trying to do the Meshuggah tour this fall. I hit those guys up, but I don't know if that can happen or not. But we'd love to like support somebody again and like do like a cool little run.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, we need to get in front of people again. It's been too long.
Well, it's still cool that we're at least getting new music. So
yeah, definitely, I mean, we're like I guess we're like the Beatles. Like we'll put out albums and then just
fucking A, man.
Before we do the Patreon, do you have anything else, McClay? Or?
No.
Sweet, man. I just want to say thanks again for coming on the show. We really fucking appreciate it.
Yeah,
is there any plugs or anything you want to where people can find you, shit like that?
Yeah. I mean, well, thanks for having me. Like, I know you guys have supported like Sacramento bands like Far and us and Deftones. That's awesome. And I had to come on here and like give you guys some more Sacto like knowledge.
Fuck yeah.
This is
because you guys have really been into it. It's like cool. Yeah. So thanks for having me. It's a pleasure. We have Instagram, Will Haven Band, Instagram. We still have Facebook, believe it or not. Will Haven 43, I think, is our Facebook. And then that's pretty much it. Minus Head Records is putting out put out more today than putting out our new record. So Minus Head Records has information on there. And then, search for YouTube, Will Haven. There's tons of live shit, and all our videos are up on there. And hopefully we'll release something here in the next few weeks, a single and a video. And yeah, just keep chugging on.
Fuck yeah, man.
Hell yeah.
Sweet, man. We really appreciate you coming on.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me. Appreciate it.
All right. Well, we appreciate you guys joining the Bogcast. We'll see you next time on the next episode.